Hi, John Terry with Vision Advisors, and I want to thank you for taking some time to be with us today as we're going to spend a few minutes talking about an underserved market that maybe you haven't considered. Now, I had an opportunity a few years ago to travel to the country of Cameroon, and my daughter and I had an opportunity to help work with an organization, a nonprofit group that was actually installing the very first private school for special needs children in that country. And it's interesting because it started me on a journey to begin to understand more about the plight of families dealing with special needs children. Many of you know that for many years I was a martial arts instructor, and we had a program in our school where we worked with kids that were dealing with autism at various levels. And we saw tremendous success in being able to help those children be able to learn to communicate better, learn to interact with other people. And we saw some amazing transformations take place as these kids went through the martial arts. But in talking with the families about the many challenges they face and working with other families in our church that adopted special needs children, some with brain injuries, some with developmental illnesses, some with developmental injuries that were going to follow them the rest of their lives, it opened my eyes to a very unique world. And then another world that I've seen over the last several years, and I've had an opportunity through the work I've done in estate planning over many years, is to now begin to see that we're living long enough for age-related illness and injury to begin to take its toll in our lives. And as a result of that, the number of people that we're seeing dealing with dementia and memory loss issues is at an all-time high. Several of you know that I had an opportunity to champion a product by Swiss Re, and I spent about a year away from Vision, traveling across the country, teaching awareness about this plight in America of this sandwich generation. People that are still raising children, but at the same time having to bring their aging parents back into their home because they'd suffered an ADL event and they could no longer care for themselves. And it opened my eyes to two underserved markets that we as financial planners can have an opportunity to make a difference in the world. And one of the most knowledgeable people in this area that I've invited to be a part of this very special training today is the lady that you see here on the screen with me, and it's Stacy Pearson. And I want to read you just a little bit of her bio, and then I want to turn it over to her and let her have some conversation because this is a topic that is near and dear to her heart. For those of you that don't yet know who Stacy is, let me give you a little bit of her background. Stacy Pearson is a powerful voice in the estate planning and legacy arena. She has extensive experience speaking and keynoting at conferences, summits, and at the United Nations. This is the quality of person we're bringing to the room today. Stacy trains insurance providers and wealth services professionals how to better serve their clients with the addition of estate planning solutions as a foundational tool to any financial plan. She also shows nonprofit organizations how they can receive planned gifts and deferred donations without the cost and the overhead previously needed to process these gifts. Now, Stacy herself has a brother with special needs, if I believe that's correct. And as a result of that, she speaks from firsthand experience about the issues that these families face, dealing with special needs children that are going to need care the rest of their lives, dealing with aging parents that are going to need care for a period of time, but the stress and the strain, both emotionally and financially, it puts on the families. This, as I've said, is an underserved market that is begging for someone just like you to step into their lives and bring them some peace, some comfort, and an opportunity to understand there are solutions available to help them with that planning so that they've got an opportunity to see to it that their loved ones have access to every available resource that can help them. And with that, Stacy, I want to thank you for joining us. And I'd love to just start having a conversation about this particular arena. And I'm just going to let you take this where you want to go. So.
Well, thank you, John, and thank you all for taking some time to learn about this group of people that's out there. I encourage everyone, whenever you're in front of an audience, to always pivot to a question and ask for a raise of hands and ask this question: do any of you have a member of your immediate or extended family that is dealing with, that is raising a child with challenges, disabilities, or special needs? If you ask it like that, challenges, disabilities, or special needs, you'll get the right answer, because disability is a full spectrum, and they may not consider that what they're dealing with at the moment is a special needs situation. They might be waiting on a diagnosis. They might be in a gray area. They may or may not have already qualified for some government benefits. And so the way they classify themselves may be different depending on how you ask the question. So when I ask this question in many of my audiences, I get a 40 to 50% hand raise. And I would venture a guess that if we took a raise of hands on who's here with John today, we might see those same kind of numbers. So I would imagine that the information we're talking about may hit home for some of you a little closer than others. So yes, this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. Several years ago, I traveled 11 hours to come home to my parents' house to help take care of my brother while my mom was undergoing mass surgery for all the years of his care. And I was not in the house very long before I had to call an ambulance to pick up my dad. And he was completely incoherent, and I had to put him on an ambulance by himself and send him out. And he was in the hospital for over a week, recovered, but over a week. So I thought, this is why I'm here. I can take care of my brother. I know all about him. I've spent most of my life with him. What I didn't realize a few hours later was that I was in over my head, because I didn't know the combination to the medicine safe. And I knew he had some critical anti-seizure medications that he needed. And I remembered talking to Mom that she was trying to get a diagnosis on whether he had a corn sensitivity or a full-blown allergy. And some of you might know there's a huge difference. If you don't know the difference, you can't start feeding somebody. And so I'm frantic on the phone, talking to relatives, trying to piece together the information that was locked inside of my mom. And for years, I have spent advocating for these families without a voice, and all the ways that they fall through the cracks. So I knew I wasn't alone in needing this information. When a parent caregiver tries to write down this type of information on a paper ledger, they lose the ledger. It gets lost in the avalanche that they call their office space, because they're a caregiver, right? And usually their life is cloaked chaos somewhere. And so paper ledgers haven't worked. When we end up passing the baton to the care of a third party, they don't want that information. They feel that if it's an institutionalized, they feel like they're competent, they'll work through it. Basically, what they're doing is experimenting with these kids who are oftentimes nonverbal, and I have seen firsthand the repercussions of that. And so I sought out to try to create something that would keep these families from falling through the cracks, and to successfully pass on a parent caregiver guide that would actually get passed on to the future guardian. And so I created the first ever hybrid special needs trust. Now, special needs trusts have been around for a long time, but one that has a caregiver's guide that is entered electronically, so you can backspace over an old medication and put in a new one, or an old doctor, a new therapist, and you can keep those changes going. And then when the baton of caregiving is passed to a future guardian, then that passes along and no one has to dig it out of an office or find it. And so it's a tech assisted solution. So that's one of the things that you should know about, is that there is a solution. There's multiple solutions out there. This is one of them. And we're not here to necessarily go into that fully, but I will touch on it and let you know more about it if John wants me to go in that direction. So one of the I should just say that little bit about kind of the end of that story is that eventually I ended up moving in with my mom and dad. They're my dad's in his 80s, my mom's approaching 80 in a year, and my brother's in his early 50s. And I like to say that any day we are just one tent short of a full-blown circus around here. And so I'm definitely part of that sandwich generation, John, that you talk about. Definitely. So some days I'm not sure if I'm here to help out with my brother or if I'm caregiving for 3 people now. So it's very interesting. I actually have a couple of slides, John. Does that work if I share?
Absolutely. Yes,
Slides?
ma'am. Yeah. And while you're pulling those up, I'll mention the fact that, I have an 86-year-old dad and I have an 83-year-old mom. And my dad was my oldest student in the martial arts. At the age of 70, I caught my dad just before 70th birthday doing a Billy Blanks Taibo tape. So I gave my dad a karate gi and a certificate for a month of classes at my school. Well, that became a joke that I was going to charge my dad if he stayed longer than a month. But my dad got involved in the martial arts and he earned his black belt at 75. But by the time he got to 80, he couldn't remember any of the Japanese terminology that he'd learned. Now at the age of 86, while they're still living independently, when I have a conversation with my mom and dad, I have the same conversation 2, 3, and 4 times a week. And it's now at the point that my sister and I are having those conversations. At what point do we go get mom and dad and either move them in my house or move them in my sister's house? And we both still have kids at home. So again, looking at that sandwich generation on that level as well. So this is something that can happen. So Stacy, I want to cover something right up front, because one of the comments I saw early on come in is that these families that have these kids don't have assets and there's not much we can do to help them. Now, I've seen families that don't have assets and there's not a lot we can do to help them, but I've seen a significant number of families that have substantial assets that have an opportunity to be able to do other things for their kids. And they have a variety of planning tools available to them that they don't. As you're getting into these slides, can you speak for just a minute to the broad breadth of what we see both demographically, psychologically, and financially in terms of the different families that are dealing with special needs kids, and that they don't just come from one specific area of our demographics here in the country?
That's right, John. A disability is no respecter of person. And so we do see disability in every group imaginable. And one of the things that I will touch on here is that I learned the same thing that you have, that there is a large spectrum and you never know who you're going to be in front of and what kind of help they're going to be able to afford. And so to try to serve both ends of the spectrum, I am currently in the process of setting up a special needs, I'm not special needs, a nonprofit inspired by my brother. It's in his name. And that, so if any of you are nonprofit specialists, you can give me a ring. I might need some help as I set this up. But what it is I'm going to be able to raise money to pass on special needs trusts as a gift to these families who can't afford it. And that's because I have seen firsthand the tragedy of kids who end up in the system. And we're going to talk about that here on a couple of slides coming up, is what happens if something happens to their last legal guardian. If you've got mom and dad, it would be the remaining parent, and maybe they don't pass away. Maybe they just are not physically capable or mentally capable of the routine and the physical aspects of caregiving. And so it could be just that, or maybe they've reached some form of incapacity And we don't want those kids in the system, because I hear the horror stories of what happens when they end up there. So being able to service both ends of the spectrum now with a nonprofit that raises money to give away special needs trust is kind of the way I'm solving that problem. And at you as advisors, you have to find ways that you can support yourself while doing what you're passionate about. And I feel that there is something here for everyone in serving this group. Obviously, we're not sending this out to a group of nonprofits. You all are financial advisors and insurance agents. And so I recognize that you have to support yourself. And we'd be happy to talk to you about the opportunities. But this is not the type of market where you're just giving your time away for free. And if you feel like you're not in that position, that's okay.
And I know there's been several, Stacy. I know some of the planning that I've done in the past. I've worked with families that had assets, and they wanted to make sure that they properly provided for their child, but also didn't disqualify them from financial aid that they're available for with the state. So there's an opportunity to serve both audiences with what we're talking about today. And that's what I like about what you do and your passion for serving these incredible lives that are gifted in their own unique way.
Yes, absolutely. So let's jump in here really quick and kind of move through a few things, and that might generate some more conversation, John.
Absolutely.
So when we talk about dependence, we're talking about any dependence, really. They might be typically developing. The word normal isn't socially acceptable in all circles anymore. So they like us to use typically developing. And you may also end up with kids somewhere in a spectrum of disability with challenges and special needs. So even if anything happens to these kids, parents, their legal guardians, they're going to end up in the system. So let's look at this. When I saw this picture, I came across this picture doing some research, and I did get emotional. I cried a little bit because in this picture, I saw my mom and every mom raising a child with special needs. This is at a ruin site. So obviously everything around has crumbled and disappeared. But here are these precious moms still holding the weight of the world on their shoulders, on their head. And when I talk to moms and I say, what is your plan to take care of this child if something happens to you? Almost all the way across the board, they give me a version of one answer. I don't have a plan. I just have to live forever. And so this is the plight. This is the solution you can be offering, is something that will actually solve their problems. This is my brother Sean, and he loves Hot Wheels and Happy Meals. He met Ronald McDonald when he was a youngster, and he knows that his good friend Ronald McDonald will always put a Hot Wheel in every Happy Meal that comes to the door. And so he thinks everyone coming to the door is coming to deliver a Happy Meal. And we have Hot Wheels stuffed in. We're like drug dealers. We have them stuffed in the sides of the vehicles. We have them stuffed in the flower boxes by the front door. And it's so that we can always grab one and put it in everything that we have. And so my nonprofit is called Sean's Gift, because we do believe that every person has a gift from God to leave a legacy, to change the world. And so his gift is his legacy, and he's going to be able to gift special needs trusts to others. And it's truly his inspiration that has kept me going all these years. This is a picture of me at the United Nations. That's not an ugly earring. That's actually my translator device that I was wearing that at that particular moment. And so I have fought some battles for these families and have made some big enemies, but it's very worth it, very worth it. So let's talk a little bit about what does happen to these families. So if you die with or without a will, your family's estate is going to probate court. And probate court drags your relatives and drags your dependent children right in with it. And it used to be that if you had a couple of special needs kids, or maybe one even, and they ended up without a legal guardian, the state would step in and take over. And they were oh so happy if an aunt or a grandma or another relative would take them off their hands. But that's kind of changed. And I worked as a legislative advocate for years. So I've worked with these groups of people. So what happens is they end up in probate guardianship. So your stuff goes to probate, but so do your dependent children. Now, they may eventually end up with grandma and grandpa or end up at your sister's house, but there's going to be a battle. Sometimes I've seen the state actually fight grandparents and relatives for legal guardianship of these kids, because why? Oh, they're a moneymaker to the state now. And the state gets matching money from the feds. And I've investigated several of those cases legislatively as well. So there's a need to talk about guardianship with these groups. And that's a place where you can get your foot in the door with some local organizations who have chapters. All of these groups have support groups that are out there. And if they're national, they typically will have local chapters, and those local chapters may meet once a month, and they're all the time looking for a speaker. So you could come in and just talk about probate guardianship and how that works and how it doesn't work. So the worst thing in the world is to have a nonverbal child being experimented on by strangers. And I actually did a special needs trust for a family who had adopted a couple of special needs siblings. And when I was putting the diagnosis in the caregiver's guide with the parent, she started going on and on and on and on. And I was running out of space and had created a paragraph. And I'm like, can I just ask how this young girl ended up with a paragraph of problems and diagnoses? And she said, yeah, it was from the abuse of her foster parents in the system when she lost her parent. And so this is what we're trying to prevent, right? And so I say, that these children deserve, in their darkest moment, when they've lost their last caregiver, they deserve to be taken care of by somebody who has a roadmap on what they like and what works for them. So it's kind of like a treasure map that we're creating using the current guardian. And inside the system, this is kind of what we have. We have 14 pages that look similar to this, and parents can go in and check mark things for fast answers and have unlimited character space to create ongoing information that will be passed on if they don't come home from work tomorrow. So this is a little bit what the caregiver guide looks like. And what's really nice is there's also a medical card that ties into medical records that you can upload. Parents can upload this information, and it's available to an attending physician. So a lot of hospitals before COVID, they were dealing with the epidemic of minors ending up picked up straight from school by first responders and transported to the hospital, all without a parent on board. The parents are contacted at work or at home and meet up at the hospital, but meanwhile, the hospital has taken control of the care of this child and transport until a parent shows up. So they were reeling at, what do we do with this? Because so many kids today are on medications, and they're all at school, and they're all growing. Their weight changes as they grow. Their medications need tweaked, and they have episodes at school. The school is not able to deal with that, so their only option is to call the paramedics. And so this wallet card can be deposited at the school, dropped in their file, or the child can carry it if they do carry something on them. And then it allows a attending physician to follow the instructions on that card to access the medical directives, the medications, the diagnosis, so that they have a leg up on what might be possibly happening with this child and what they're dealing with in the interim before they've got mom and dad involved. So that is that's another feature. We have a grandparent crisis today too, mostly driven by the opioid situation. And this is where we have more and more grandparents taking care of their grandchildren because there is no parent with legal guardianship available. And what these grandparents don't know, most of them probably are astute enough to get a will and have that done. But what they don't realize is that with or without a will, that their estate, their stuff, and those dependents are all going to probate court. So the very system that they stepped in to keep their hands off of their grandkids is going to now get their grandkids if they pass away with only a will. They have to have a trust in order to protect these kids from the system.
And Stacy, I think that's such a big eye opener for financial professionals. They don't realize it's not just the stuff that goes to probate, but it's the minor kids that go there as well. And if there's not appropriate documentation, they essentially become wards of the court, and we deal with a conservatorship or a guardianship. And as a result of that, the court dictates what's going to happen to that child, and that may not be to those parents' wishes at all.
Yes, I dealt with a local family where the parents were suddenly taken out of the picture, and the sister to the mom was spending her days at the kids' house. There were two children involved, a baby and a 5-year-old. And the 5-year-old was at kindergarten, and the baby was home with her aunt in the child's home. And the state literally sent a car to school, and they picked up the 5-year-old. It looks a lot like kidnapping when you just extract a kid by strangers and take them away and then give them over to strangers. Then there was another car that pulled up at the house, knock at the door. The child's aunt answers the door with the baby on her hip, and they said, "We're here to take the child." Well, you can just imagine. I mean, if it was you or I or anybody we know, there would be a knockdown drag out over that. This was not that different. And they ended up extracting the baby from the arms of the aunt. And that, of course, there was a lot of yelling and screaming, and the baby's screaming now. And so the aunt is like, at least take a comfort item. And I will tell you, they left without a blankie, a bottle, or a binky. And they said, "We'll take it from here." And so this is why we can't let this keep happening. These are the families that fall through the cracks. Now, many months later, the children came back into the aunt's custody. However, the state didn't want her to seek legal guardianship. And so they said, we'll be determining where the kids go to school. We will be setting up their doctor's appointments. You can come if you want, or you don't have to, but we call the shots. So now what if you have a child who is fragile health-wise, and it's very important that they not have certain things that these doctors might prescribe? Well, there's not going to be any institutional knowledge passed on. So that's a problem. With a trust, you name the next appointed guardian, kind of like a godparent. They're not a legal guardian, but they can then seek legal guardianship by going to the county family court. And this is a piece of information you can help your families with and pass on. That's where they seek for an application to obtain that guardianship. And then, because they've been named in a trust, they will be in a favorable position with the judge. Also, if the trust is funded with any inheritance at all, they'll see that there is finances there to help with the child, and better yet, that there is a third party named as the successor guardian, and that way you're not giving all the money to the new caregiver, because new caregivers who suddenly end up with a bundle on their porch and have to try to figure it out, maybe modify a job, a lot of them end up kind of cracking up, and they end up self-medicating and getting themselves in trouble. And so the court would prefer that they're not the ones also with the money, because they can blow that money on their self-medication instead of taking care of these kids. So the court really likes to see an appointment and a third party money manager, and a trust with a guide that moves forward that will position them favorably. And so I like to tell my clients that they can, by getting a trust, and I talk to grandparents about gifting a trust to their children who have minors and children with disabilities. So as soon as my kids started having kids, I made sure that they got a trust. If they couldn't afford one, I was going to make sure I paid for it, because I'm not having any of my grandkids end up in the system. And so I talk to grandparents all the time about this, and it's a great gifting opportunity. So there's some places here that you can get involved. First of all, like I said, you can guest lecture. You don't have to know a lot in order to be the expert in the room on this topic. You can also go to Facebook and find support groups. I was helping an advisor in, I think it was St. Petersburg, Florida. So kind of a small geographic location. And we found hundreds of support groups on Facebook that had over 500,000 subscribers and members participating. So if you just start joining a few of your local support groups on Facebook, then you will be in touch with these groups of people who are there for support. John also has some gifts for you, I think, John, for attending. And we have created some social media ads that work quite well. And it's verbiage. You can add your own pictures and do your own thing with it. But if you use drip campaigns, or if you use Facebook ads, there's a way that you can kind of prick the attention of some of these families so that they will reach out to you and say, oh, wait a minute, I didn't know about that. Poll every audience, always ask for a raise of hands. And then we have some nonprofit opportunities as well to serve this group. So nonprofits that support these families are all the time looking for ways that they can raise money. One of the things that we work with a company called Integrated Trust Systems, and that's where my product is available, the Universal Guardian Trust. And anytime a nonprofit, a 501c3, spends their money or their relationship to put you in front of their audience members, then if there is a trust generated, Integrated Trust Systems will profit share a portion of that transaction fee will go directly to the nonprofit. So let me tell you how that kind of plays out. So I stopped sharing there, right?
Yes, you did.
Okay, great. So I know a guy who had really created a whole career by working with Children's Hospital. They have local branches. So you could talk to your local Children's Hospital, and they would assemble a room of probable donors every month. And this guy simply walked in and gave a presentation on how they needed to get their affairs in order, and how important it was to not let their estate go to probate. And then when a trust was written, they made it very easy for a donation to Children's Hospital to come out of that, so that in the end, their estate could make a donation straight to Children's Hospital, and then Integrated Trust Systems would send a profit sharing donation over to Children's as well. So I have found that this is a great way to get doors open. Also, if you are familiar with charitable remainder trusts, this is what separates the small nonprofits from the large ones, is the ability to take these large, long-term planned deferred gifts. Oftentimes they've needed a planned gift director in order to be able to navigate the system or the maze, or they have spent a lot of money on subscription for a company who will process these types of estate gifts. This is how football stadiums are built, wings of hospitals are built, right? The St. Jude's of the world know how to do this. Well, now, using the back office admin stuff that Integrated Trust Systems has put together, we can help a nonprofit of any size to simply add some verbiage to their website that says, you know, here are the benefits of a planned deferred gift to our organization. If you're interested, give us a call. And then if you get that call, boom, you can put one of us on the phone and we can begin to talk the organization and their probable donor through it. And so that does not cost the nonprofit anything. So this is kind of a jaw dropper in the industry, because they're used to paying buku dollars to be able to receive these large deferred planned gifts. So depending on what area you maybe have a circle of influence in, maybe your friends are directors of nonprofits, yay, talk to them. Get them in front of John or myself, and we'll talk to them for you. You don't have to be the expert. You know some experts, and we're happy to help you with that.
I think that's phenomenal in terms of opportunities that are there. And I think, Stacy, that we've opened some eyes today to really see some benefit of serving this underserved market. And I love the idea that you talked about of going to the grandparents and having the grandparents gift the trust. That's a strategy that I've used for years when I was involved in a lot of personal production in the estate planning arena. Was the grandparents took care of doing their own affairs. But one of the greatest things that I saw was the fact that when the grandparents said, I love my kids enough to make sure that they're also taken care of. And they would create that trust for them that allowed them to be able to bypass a lot of the insaneness that takes place in the probate courts today. And as a result of that, it gave them control that they didn't have.
Yeah. I want to just backstep a little bit, because some of your attendees may not know that the reason why a special needs trust is so important. So if a child is on SSI, which is a form of government benefit that they have to qualify for by diagnosis and by financial status. Okay, so they need that income coming in every month. It's not a lot, but it's enough usually to keep the family going. And so if the care of that child who's on SSI moves to another caregiver, then it is important that that new caregiver have that income coming in as well. But because it's needs-based, if a parent accidentally or on purpose ends up with an estate or a portion of estate that goes to that child, and if they go to probate, it most certainly will end up going to usually a child, okay, then it will kick that child off of their benefits. 99% of the time, it's going to be enough to kick them off of benefits. And a lot of the times there's no requalification there. It's just so hard and so difficult. Now you've got a caregiver whose hands are suddenly busy with the physical care of this child or children. And now they're supposed to learn this maze and this labyrinth and go through all the things that a parent had a lifetime of adaptation, but a sudden caregiver has no adaptation time at all. And so a special needs trust was the government solution for recognizing that these kids do not have income of their own, but live with parents who do. Because needs-based programs look at the family structure, the family unit, and they'll say who in this family unit that's sharing food, sharing resources is making money. And they want an account for the income of that family. Well, it used to be that dad's income would kick the youngster off of any programs. Well, the special needs trust creates a barrier, kind of like a firewall. And so only the child is considered in qualification for a needs-based. But an inheritance coming to the child, I've even seen where a grandparent never said anything about a clause in their will that they were going to give money to this child in the child's name, or a sympathetic relative or even a neighbor that never said anything, but when they passed, all of a sudden, boom, there's a check for this child. And without knowing it, the child is kicked off of their disability, not disability, but their SSI income. There is a difference between SSI and SDI. And so now with a special needs trust, anything that is for the child, there is a successor trustee that is designated to create a special account for all those deposits. And that special account cannot be counted against the child for qualification. So everybody wins with a special needs trust, because now you have resources, an estate, a portion of an estate that's there to take care of the needs of the child. And it's going to be divvied out by that special need, that successor trustee. And you have a caregiver, a future caregiver, who's going to be able to benefit by that. And it's not going to be disrupted by gifting on accident or on purpose. So that's why these families need a special needs trust.
Stacy, thank you for doing that. I was going to go back and ask you to cover that, and I'm glad you did. You did a phenomenal job in doing that. And many financial advisors I've talked to over the 30 plus years I've been involved in this industry don't understand the uniqueness of what that firewall, that special needs trust does for the benefit of that child and allowing them to continue to qualify for that government assistance that can make a huge difference in the quality of care that can be provided for that child for the rest of their lives, but still be able to access some of the proceeds from that special needs trust for supplemental benefits that aren't covered under SSI or SSDI. So it really, as you said, creates the best of both worlds.
Right. Now, John, I see that we've got a couple questions, or a question that just popped up.
Yeah. What is the cost range for a special needs trust? Yeah.
So using integrated trust systems, they've been the back office for estate planning attorneys for going on 40 years. Mm-hmm. And with the changes in the Uniform Trust Code, which they are using and utilizing, and changes in technology, basically what they've done is they've taken the attorney out of the front of the cycle. So most of you are familiar with going to an attorney for a trust or a special needs trust. That attorney, since the advent of computers, has usually paid a subscription price or something to something that helps them create those documents. They're obtaining that at a wholesale price. They turn around, get it prepared, hand it out the door at the markup that they need in order to stay in business and keep the doors open. Okay, now that cost in the traditional cycle starts for special needs about $3,000 to $5,000, $6,000 are common numbers that I hear. There's no real average, but those are common numbers. And a lot of families feel like, that's why they haven't gotten one, is because it is cost prohibitive. And they're like, oh my gosh, we're going to start with a retainer and who knows how much higher it's going to go. So they are afraid that they might end up escalating into a range they couldn't afford. So there's been a barrier there. So now what Integrated Trust Systems has done is they have taken the attorney out of the front door of the equation and embedded them into the middle of the sales cycle, if you want to call it a sales cycle. And their integrated trust systems is able to dictate the price. So now an end user comes in through you or comes in through someone like John, and they meet you and you introduce this, then you can obtain a trust for them at a near wholesale price. And along the way, they will talk to a paralegal who will customize and talk to an attorney who will customize. They get a full-blown, fully customized trust, and they're getting it at a near wholesale price. Now, what's really great about the way Integrated Trust Systems does it is they're getting a special needs trust that is not a standalone, that's going to maybe protect the child's SSI qualifications down the road, send a caregiver's guide to the future guardian. But meanwhile, mom and dad's estate's going to go to probate hell. That is not the way they do it. Integrated Trust Systems creates first a revocable living trust umbrella that keeps the whole family, the whole estate from going to probate. So that's number one. And that costs around $2,000, ranging between $2,000 and $2,400. Okay, so you're in a lower range when you're talking about saving the whole family from probate. Then the special needs trust, the universal guardian trust, and by the way, you can Google that, universalguardiantrust.com, and there's a little 9-minute video that explains this. You can also get that video and embed it using, we've got a YouTube upload site where you can literally take just the naked video, pop it into your own lead capture landing page or on your website and use that. There's no charge for that. Okay, that add-on that used to cost $3,000 is between $750 and $850. I haven't looked at it recently, so that's why I'm like, I should know the price of that. But depending on when you see this video, who knows what the exact price is anyway, but it's under $1,000. It's like $750. And so that's added on to the revocable living trust. So now they have a fully operational, irrevocable special needs trust that meets all of the government's rigors for doing what it's supposed to do and then some.
Yeah, and the nice thing about it is for the price of what they would typically pay for a special needs trust retail, they're getting a full-blown estate plan where you as the financial advisor are the quarterback. What we've done when working with, and I know Gary, who runs Integrated Trust Systems, been a longtime friend and been involved with Integrated Trust Systems for a number of years. We've got a unique arrangement with them that we can plug you into the ITS platform where you can offer that to your clients and have an opportunity to serve them. And you essentially, in doing that, you put an estate planning attorney on your team that is actually working for you and your clients together. And that as they sit down with that client and they have conversations, if life insurance comes up, if as they're reviewing their assets and they're looking at how to reposition those assets, there's a need for financial planning to be done or services or products to be provided, that attorney is going to make that referral back to you to give you an opportunity to write that life insurance that's going to fund that special needs trust, that's going to provide the money for that child for the rest of their lives. You get a chance to write that, and that attorney doesn't participate in the commissions of that. That's 100% compensation to you as a financial professional for serving an underserved market at a very high level. As you have an opportunity to plug in, and we can teach you how to go have conversations with hospitals, have conversations with nonprofits about creating those fundraising opportunities that Stacy talked about. And as a result of that, you're now being positioned in front of the wealthier clientele that are dealing with special needs children themselves, or they are passionate towards that. And as people see that this is a cause that you care about and that you're passionate about, all of a sudden they want to know what else it is that you do. And now you get a chance to introduce them to everything else that you do. And that can in itself, you're essentially bringing the law of reciprocity that Robert Cialdini talks about in this book, The Power of Influence. You're bringing that into bearing your practice. Because as you're serving somebody at a high level and you're doing something for them up front, raising money for a cause or a passion that's important to you, that serves the lives of other people, those other people that benefit from that have a psychological urge that they have to reciprocate and give back to you in some way for the benefit that you've given to them. They become your cheerleaders. They become your referral partners and saying, this financial professional, Mike or Robert or anybody else on the call, you served my family at an incredible level and did something I didn't know how to do and didn't even know could be done. How can I help you? Now they have an opportunity to introduce you, and that becomes a referral source. Now, the question may be, what does it cost you as a financial professional to plug in to integrated trust systems? If you're working with us with Vision Advisors, we have an opportunity to plug you into that platform for free so that you've got an opportunity to have access to Stacy and to the team at ITS. Put an estate planning attorney on your team. And now it's not just you in the marketplace. You now have an estate planning attorney. You've got Stacy, you've got me, you've got other resources available to you that can help you do something up to this point that allows you to stand out as unique and different in the marketplace. So I want you to think about it this way as we wrap up. And I'm going to share what we're going to do as far as some gifts here in just a minute. How many of you have competition in your marketplace? I'm sure every one of you listening to Stacy and I talk have other competitors in the marketplace that do what you do, that sell annuities, life insurance, long-term care, Medicare supplement, whatever it is that you do. How do you stand out in the crowd as unique and different? So that when people say, what do you do and why should I pick you over anybody else that does what you do? And you can come in and say, I also do this. And this is my give back to the community. And this is where I can also serve you or families that you may know that have these particular issues in the marketplace. Now you're going to stand out as unique and different, and you're going to get people's attention. And as a result of that, you're going to get business you otherwise might not have gotten because you have become cause, or what I like to refer to as mission focused. When you get on a mission to make a difference in the world, you get recognized and acknowledged for that. And people want to do business with somebody that's making a difference in their community. Stacy's done that at an incredibly high level. And Stacy, thank you for what you're doing to be a voice for the many, many children that have special needs that can't voice their own concerns. So thank you for doing that. And for those of you on this call, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to send a follow-up communique to you with some information on how you can join integrated trust systems and have an opportunity to be able to offer that resource. Now, you're not going to make money on that, but it's going to open the door for you to have an opportunity to do the financial planning that's going to allow you to serve not only the customers and clients that have special needs children, but their center of influence as well. And as a result of that, it's a unique way to scale your business. And when I was in personal production, and I did that for a number of years, that's how I made my living, in serving communities at a very high level. And I worked a referral-based market my entire life. I never had to go out and buy leads. I never had to go out and figure out what was I going to do, because the people I served were so appreciative. Every single one of them made introductions to 3, 4, 5 other families that I could serve. That's the power of working in this market that you may be missing. So Stacy, as we wrap up, is there anything else you want to share? And then I'm going to talk about our free gifts and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, for before COVID, I traveled coast to coast training advisors and agents how they can incorporate this into their practices, whatever their practice is. And as a result, I worked with all these agents, and I also worked with all of the families. And because of that, have created a really streamlined process that can be duplicated. And working with John and I together, we can introduce you to that process I even have an online academy that teaches you which button to push and all of the tech. There's no cost for any of that. And that's available to John and anyone that he's working with. And so, John, we could even do some follow-ups on that as well. But we have a streamlined process that works well and creates exactly the things that John's been talking about. And that is a way that you can get in front of new audiences and find out what their needs are and make the suggestions that you would otherwise suggest. So yeah, happy to work with all of you.
Absolutely. So I'm going to be sending out some follow-ups. Stacy's got a couple of gifts that she shared. I'm going to be pushing out to share with you as well. But I want to give you guys an opportunity to schedule a one-on-one call. And I'd love to have an opportunity to talk with you about your practice, what you're doing. And I know many of you have questions, and we may not have answered all of them in this call, but I want to invite you to schedule a 30-minute strategy call with me. And then as a result of that call, then we've got some resources that I want to share with you. But I'm going to make it predicated on us having a call, because if I just send the information and you look at it and you do nothing, it's a waste of your time and ours. So I want to make sure that as we share these resources, they're going to be shared with people that want to do something with it. And I want to share with you my experience, what we've done in having an opportunity to interact with Stacy and some of our team members that are working with her now, to be able to talk about what she's doing and how that's making a difference. And then we'll give you an opportunity to plug in and to work with integrated trust systems. Again, no cost to do that. And we want to share with you how that's done. So you're going to be getting a follow-up email from me. So be looking for that, john@visionadvisorsinc.com. There'll be a couple of benefits that I'm going to share and a couple of freebies I'm going to throw into that. But there's some additional tools and resources, such as Stacy's training, we want to put in your hands, but we don't want to put those in your hands until we've got you registered with ITS, so that you can actually take what you're seeing in that training and implementing that in serving your audience. So watch for an email from john@visionadvisorsinc.com. That'll be coming out later today. And I want to thank you for taking some time. We've gone over a little bit longer than I planned, but for what we talked about today, it was important that we have this longer conversation. So Stacy, I want to say thank you for taking some time to share your passion, your expertise, and look forward to answering questions that you as a financial professional may have, and seeing how we can help you implement this into your practice to make a difference right where you are. So thanks for joining us. We'll be reaching back out soon. Thank you for your passion, your interest, and have a great day.
Thank you all.